what the Church of Scientology is so afraid of.
This is SPTV.
Hello and welcome to the Scientology Money Project with your host, Jeffrey Augustine. I wanted to weigh in on the viral news story of the letter and the apology of Ashton Kutcher and his wife, Mila Kunis. They wrote a letter to Judge Charlene O'Mado in defense of their friend, Danny Masterson, asking for a lighter sentence. And this was viewed as hypocritical because the couple claimed to stand up for the rights of women and of children, except in this case, they wanted an exception for their friend Danny Masterson because he has such a fine character. And this is just staggering to me. And I'll tell you why. Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis did not attend 1 minute of the trial. They were not there at the trial. Had they been there to hear the victim impact statements of the Jane Does, they would never have written a letter. The horror of what the Jane Does endured, of what Danny Masterson put them through, between drugging them, violating them. These crimes of which Danny Masterson was convicted by a jury are so violent that they carry a sentence of life in the state of California. That's how violent these crimes are. So I see Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis as wanting to be willingly blind. I see them as cowards for not showing up in the court. If they're really so friendly with Danny, why the hell were they not in court even one day? I attended both trials. I was there at the sentencing. Leah Remini was there for the Jane Does. She was there during the first trial, attended almost all the second trial. She was there at the sentencing. Leah took time out of her busy schedule because she believed in the Jane Does. She was their advocate, emotional support, and wanted to be there for them, but not Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. They couldn't be bothered to show up. Were they too afraid of the bad PR from being there? Or were they just too busy and didn't really care? Well, one thing is for sure, they wrote a very stupid letter and now they're regretting it. It's very emotionally intense. It's a very difficult experience to go through, and it's hell for the actual Jane Does. What Philip Cohen put them through along with Shawn Holley, deplorable. Thomas Massaro, it was deplorable what they did, what the women had to endure. I think that Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis are cowards for not showing up in court. Bijou Phillips was there every day for her husband. Billy Baldwin and China Phillips were there every day. Danny's mother was there. His siblings, Jordan, Alana, Christopher, Will, family friend Chris Wadhams was there. Other people were there to support Danny, even though he was being accused of the most heinous crimes. They were there for him. That's what family does. But Ashton and Mila, no, couldn't be bothered to show up in court. Why? Were they worried about the bad publicity? And also, were they so naive to think that did they not check with a lawyer? Did they not know that their letters would become a public matter? And now the issue of groveling, pathetic public apology, which is what, as has been said, it's the worst apology ever. They look profoundly lost. Now, some YouTubers are saying that the court leaked the letters. That's not true. These YouTubers are just misinformed. In the state of California, when you write a letter to a judge, it becomes part of the public court record. And I have it here. And just for educational purposes, it was Danny's own attorneys, Philip Cohen and Shawn Holley, who introduced the letters into the public domain. And I have the document right here. So let's get to it. At sentencing, each side has to issue a position on sentencing. And this is the actual document, Defendant's Memorandum of Points and Authorities in Support of Positions at Sentencing. It's authored by Philip Cohen and Shawn Holley. And I'm going to post it on my blog, ScientologyMoneyProject.com. It's 108 pages. You can read it. So let's do a Control F and look for Kutcher. And right here within the text, he's there effusively praising Danny as a role model. We go down further to the actual letter. Now, you noticed here that Ashton Kutcher, his caption on the letter, it says Christopher A. Kutcher. He uses his legal name. In the body of the letter, he uses his name, Ashton Kutcher, which we know him by. So this letter, he goes over what a fine fellow Danny Masterson is. The letter's embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. The 9/11 thing, how Danny was a huge advocate for firefighters. That thing was a Scientology front group led by Tom Cruise to get PR for the church. Ashton couldn't even be bothered to research that it was just a sham to sell L. Ron Hubbard's purification rundown and to get PR for the church. What Ashton says here, This is just mind-boggling. Uh, quote, "While I'm aware that the judgment has been cast as guilty on 2 counts of rape by force and the victims have a great desire for justice, I hope that my testament to his character is taken into consideration in sentencing. I do not believe he is an ongoing harm to society, and having his daughter raised without a present father would be a tertiary injustice in and of itself. Thank you for taking the time to read this, uh, Christopher A. Kutcher." Now, that is just staggering to get your mind around. Ashton Kutcher is actually saying that, yeah, Danny engaged in 2 violent felonies that carry a life sentence. It was horrific. There were drugs involved. At one point, there was a gun. But it would harm his daughter to be raised without a father. Ashton, you really need to pull your head out of your ass. Seriously, you and your wife, both. That's what happens to criminals. They get parted from their families. Bank robbers, chomos, swindlers. You go down the list, kidnappers, assault and battery, murder, all those things. That's what prison's about. You get separated from your family. Danny didn't care about raising a daughter when he was committing these violent felonies. He only cared about one thing, himself. He didn't even care that he was drugging women. How stupid are you? You didn't even show up in court to hear the victim impact statements, as I said. You didn't care to inform yourself or educate yourself. And you're saying that you do not believe he's an ongoing harm to society? Well, Judge Almeida doesn't agree with you because she found him to be a threat to society. That's why she revoked his bail when he was found guilty and put him right into jail, because Philip Cohen had asked that he could remain free on $3.3 million bail pending his sentencing. The judge said, no, I deem him a danger to the community, and I remand him into the custody of the LA County sheriffs. Ashton's judgment is fatally flawed, and I think it's born of ignorance and is born of a profound blindness to the facts. And it goes to the heart of the matter that he wasn't there and he didn't see it. And the same goes for his wife. Her letter appears here. Phil Cohen notes that she's a well-known actress who worked with Danny. And that's her letter there, and talking about what a fine fellow he is. And then this is her letter to the judge. Her address is, of course, redacted for privacy. And she goes through the letter, and it's the same type of thing. Danny Masterson's warmth, humor, and positive outlook. I don't know what the hell she's talking about, because at the trial, he wouldn't even testify. He showed no remorse for the women he had violated. Mila has no clue because she wasn't there either, as I said. Quote, she says in the end, quote, "In conclusion, I wholeheartedly vouch for Danny Masters' exceptional character and the tremendous positive influence he has had on me and the people around him. His dedication to leading a drug-free life and the genuine care he extends to others make him an outstanding role model and friend," unquote. Danny Masterson used drugs on his victims, Mila Kunis. What the hell are you talking about? He may have a commitment to a drug-free life for himself, but not for his victims. He sure as hell had a pro-drug approach to life for his victims. He had no warmth toward them. If you'd have heard the Jane Dones testify about how abusive and insulting, verbally, physically, that's why you should have been in court. And that's my whole problem with this thing. And then you two have to apologize. You have to walk back what you said, but it's the horses are out of the barn. It's never going to end. I think it's a disgrace. I think it's just a disgrace what you did, and the apology doesn't wash. Had you been there, had you actually been there, I think you would have had a moral right to write the letter. But having said that, had you been there, I think you would have said, "Ugh, I have to face reality. I can't write the letter." I think your conclusions would have been different had you bothered to get involved in real life downtown LA criminal court. It's a hard confrontation. And what those Jane Does had to go through was a nightmare on earth, because the defense attorneys of Masterson put the knife between their ribs. It was really vile at times. It was really vile what Thomas Messro did. It was vile what Andrew Brettler said in the press, and your friend Danny Masterson was convicted. Now, my question to you, Ashton and Mila, are you going to go visit your friend Danny in prison? Are you going to actually go see him in prison? Are you going to follow through with your friendship? What is the moral calculus here? If you've apologized, then you won't go see him in prison. You won't send him money for a canteen, or will you? That's going to be the real acid test. If Ashton and Mila make the long drive to wherever level 4 yard Danny's put in protective custody with other criminals of his ilk, will they stand by him during 30 years to life in prison? Will they still be visiting Danny in the year 2047? Will they? He's up for parole in 25 years. That puts us right there. So you're going to go see him all those years? 2025, 2030, 2035, 2040? Or will you decide it's no good for your careers? I just don't think you have good judgment at all. And a lot of people agree. So that's all I wanted to say is you should have come to trial and educated yourself a lot better. His family did, and they still stood by him, and they have a right to because they were there and they went through the ordeal with him. You didn't. You didn't. And that's to your shame. And then you apologized for re-traumatizing the victims. That is so highly offensive, that language. That is like assaulting someone and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I assaulted you. I take it all back." I don't know that there's any act you can make that would atone for this. I really don't. I don't expect you to because you're both self-absorbed. And I say that because if you weren't so self-absorbed, you wouldn't have written a letter like this. You would have gotten your hands dirty and showed up at court and researched it and said, "Hey, do we want to put our reputations on the line for Danny? Is he really a criminal?" Ashton said, "I hope he's found not guilty." Ashton didn't want to believe that his friend could have done these things. But your friend did do these things, Ashton and Mila, and they were horrific things. And the entire world knows. And you got caught up in it. And that's all on you. And that's all I have to say.